Okay, so you want to buy a casino. That probably sounds simpler than it really is. Find a building, fill it with slot machines, hire a few dealers, open the doors, and wait for money to pour in. After all, every game inside a casino is designed to favor the house. The math is on your side before the first customer even walks through the entrance. It sounds like the closest thing the business world has to guaranteed profit. And yet, some of the largest casino operators in history have struggled under enormous debt, closed iconic properties, or spent years trying to recover from financial mistakes that had nothing to do with gambling itself. So how can a business that almost never loses a game still lose the business? The answer begins with a simple misunderstanding. Most people think a casino sells gambling. It doesn't. Gambling is simply the product customers believe they're buying. The real business is much larger, much more sophisticated, and surprisingly invisible to almost everyone who walks through the front door. Imagine two casinos sitting across the street from each other. They offer nearly identical games, identical odds, identical poker tables, and identical slot machines. On paper, both should make roughly the same amount of money. But one consistently earns hundreds of millions of dollars every year while the other barely survives. The difference isn't luck. It isn't better cards or friendlier dealers. It isn't even the size of the jackpots. The difference is the system operating behind everything the customer sees. A casino isn't simply a room filled with games. It's a carefully engineered machine where mathematics, architecture, psychology, hospitality, finance, regulation, and customer behavior all work together toward a single objective. Every light has a purpose. Every hallway has a reason. Every restaurant, hotel room, parking garage, rewards program, and entertainment venue exists because someone calculated that each one could influence how long people stay, how often they return, and ultimately how much revenue flows through the property. Even the games themselves are only one component inside a much larger economic engine. That's why owning a casino isn't really about owning blackjack tables or roulette wheels. You're buying a system that never stops moving. Every hour, employees arrive, machines require maintenance, security monitors thousands of cameras, restaurants prepare meals, hotel staff clean rooms, accountants balance millions of dollars in transactions, regulators review compliance records, and marketing teams compete to bring tomorrow's customers back before today's guests even leave. The casino floor is only the surface. Beneath it sits an incredibly expensive infrastructure that continues operating whether every seat is occupied or completely empty. And that's where the first great paradox appears. The games are designed to give you an advantage. But the building around those games is constantly trying to take that advantage away through operating costs, debt, competition, taxes, labor, utilities, and changing consumer behavior. Suddenly, winning every game isn't enough. Because the casino was never just about winning games. It's about managing one of the most complex money-making systems ever built, and understanding that system is where the real story begins. Now the obvious question becomes even more interesting. If every game inside the building already gives you a mathematical advantage, why spend billions of dollars constructing luxury hotels, concert arenas, shopping districts, celebrity restaurants, convention centers, and enormous parking garages? Why not simply rent a warehouse, line up thousands of slot machines, and let probability do the rest? Because probability alone does not create wealth. Probability only creates opportunity. The real business begins long before a customer places the first bet. Imagine your property opening at exactly 8 o'clock on a Friday morning. At that moment, every blackjack table has perfect mathematical odds. Every roulette wheel has the same expected return it had yesterday. Every slot machine still carries its programmed house advantage. Yet the casino earns nothing because there is nobody inside. The mathematics cannot produce revenue without people, and people do not simply appear because a building exists. They have to be attracted, entertained, accommodated, and convinced to stay. That is why the first product a casino sells is not gambling. It is attention. Before anyone risks a single dollar, they have already chosen where to spend their evening, where to eat dinner, where to book a hotel room, where to attend a concert, and where to celebrate a vacation. Every one of those decisions determines which casino receives the opportunity to let mathematics begin working. This is why Las Vegas transformed from a collection of gaming halls into one of the largest entertainment destinations in the United States. Visitors fly hundreds or even thousands of miles, not simply to play blackjack, but to experience restaurants, live performances, luxury accommodations, shopping, sporting events, and nightlife, all concentrated inside one destination. Gambling becomes only one activity among many, yet every additional attraction quietly supports the same economic machine. The longer guests remain on the property, the more opportunities the system creates. One extra night in the hotel can become another dinner reservation. Dinner becomes another walk across the casino floor. That walk becomes another hour at a slot machine. Another hour creates thousands of additional mathematical decisions, each carrying the same invisible advantage for the house. Suddenly, revenue is no longer driven by a single wager. It is driven by time. Time is the resource every successful casino protects more carefully than chips or cash. Every additional minute inside the property multiplies the number of decisions a guest makes. Some decisions involve gambling. Others involve restaurants, drinks, retail stores, hotel upgrades, entertainment tickets, spa services, or paid parking. None of these transactions exist in isolation. They reinforce one another inside a carefully connected ecosystem where every business supports every other business. This explains why modern casino operators often analyze customer behavior with extraordinary precision. They measure how long visitors stay, which restaurants they choose, which entrances they use, how frequently they return, and how different amenities influence overall spending. They are not simply operating a gambling business. They are managing the movement of people through a highly optimized commercial environment where every additional hour has measurable economic value. The remarkable part is that most guests never notice the system surrounding them. They remember the jackpot they almost won, the excellent dinner they enjoyed, the concert they attended, or the comfortable hotel room overlooking the city skyline. What they rarely see is that every one of those experiences has already become another gear inside the same economic engine, quietly increasing the one resource that matters most before mathematics can ever begin doing its work. At this point, you have probably noticed something unusual. We have not discussed cards, dice, or slot machines in any meaningful detail, because none of them represent the true barrier to entering this business. The first challenge is simply getting permission to exist. Unlike opening a neighborhood restaurant or a retail store, building a casino begins with regulation long before construction crews ever arrive. In many jurisdictions across the United States, casino licenses are intentionally limited. Some states authorize only a handful of commercial operators. Others allow gaming exclusively on tribal lands under separate legal agreements. Certain regions prohibit casino gambling altogether. That means your greatest competitor is often not another casino. It is scarcity itself. Even if you possess unlimited capital, you cannot simply purchase land and begin accepting customers next month. Years of legal review, licensing procedures, environmental studies, financial disclosures, suitability investigations, and public hearings may stand between your investment and your opening day. Regulators are not only evaluating whether you can afford the project. They want to understand where every dollar originated, how the property will be managed, who controls ownership, and whether the operation can remain financially stable for years into the future. From their perspective, a casino is not merely another business. It is part of a highly regulated financial ecosystem handling enormous volumes of transactions every single day. That is why the license itself often becomes more valuable than the building standing on top of it. Once the legal foundation exists, another reality emerges. Scale changes everything. A small regional casino serving local residents operates under completely different economics than a destination resort welcoming visitors from across the country. The neighborhood property depends on repeat customers who may visit several times each month. The destination resort depends on tourism, conventions, major entertainment events, airline traffic, hotel occupancy, and broader economic confidence. One business survives on familiarity. The other survives on constant movement. As the operation grows, fixed costs expand even faster than revenue opportunities. Luxury hotel towers require continuous maintenance. Air conditioning systems operate around the clock. Thousands of employees receive salaries whether every room is occupied or not. Restaurants must remain prepared for peak demand even during slower periods. Digital security systems, surveillance equipment, compliance departments, marketing campaigns, insurance premiums, and technology infrastructure continue generating expenses every hour of every day. None of those costs disappear simply because fewer guests arrive on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Suddenly, the mathematical advantage inside every game starts looking much smaller than people imagine. A casino can technically win millions of individual wagers while simultaneously struggling under the weight of billions of dollars invested outside the gaming floor. That is why experienced operators rarely describe themselves as owners of gambling businesses. They see themselves as managers of enormous capital-intensive systems where gaming revenue supports an entire ecosystem rather than standing alone. The irony is almost impossible to ignore. The larger the property becomes, the less important any single game actually is. Instead, success depends on balancing regulation, financing, hospitality, entertainment, operations, real estate, and customer experience with remarkable precision. Only when every one of those moving pieces remains synchronized does the invisible mathematical advantage finally have the opportunity to become a profitable business. Now the machine is finally ready to make money, but not in the way most people imagine. The popular belief is that casinos become profitable because players eventually lose. That is true, but only at the surface. Underneath every spin, every hand, and every roll of the dice sits a much simpler formula. The business does not depend on predicting who wins tonight. It depends on knowing what will happen after millions of individual decisions accumulate over months and years. That is why experienced operators care far more about volume than about individual outcomes. One guest may leave with a large jackpot. Another may walk away after doubling their bankroll. Neither event changes the business model. What matters is that thousands of people continue making thousands of independent decisions every hour. The mathematics does not need every customer to lose. It only needs enough decisions for probability to behave exactly as expected over time. This is where the real engine quietly reveals itself. Every game carries its own built-in economic profile. Blackjack may offer relatively small margins when played with optimal strategy. Roulette provides a different statistical advantage. Slot machines often generate significantly higher long-term returns because every spin happens quickly, requires no dealer, and can repeat hundreds of times each hour. Speed becomes just as valuable as percentage. A game with a modest advantage repeated thousands of times may ultimately outperform a game with a larger advantage played only occasionally. Suddenly, the business is no longer about cards or wheels. It becomes a business of transaction frequency. Every additional decision passing through the system represents another opportunity for probability to express itself. This explains why casino executives spend enormous amounts of time studying activity instead of excitement. They monitor table occupancy, machine utilization, average session length, customer return rates, and hourly revenue across different areas of the property. They are not searching for lucky players. They are measuring how efficiently the economic engine converts time into transactions. Even loyalty programs follow this same logic. Complimentary hotel rooms, dining credits, entertainment offers, and promotional rewards are often misunderstood as generosity. In reality, they function as carefully calculated investments. If encouraging a guest to return next month generates more long-term activity than the value of the reward itself, the system has produced a positive return. Every offer is evaluated through expected lifetime value rather than immediate profit. The remarkable part is that most guests willingly participate because each individual experience feels independent. A memorable dinner, an upgraded room, or a personalized offer creates the impression of exceptional hospitality. Yet behind every one of those experiences sits a financial model asking a remarkably simple question. Will this encourage one more visit, one more hour, or one more sequence of decisions? The answer determines whether the investment continues. By now, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The games are not isolated products competing with restaurants, hotels, or entertainment venues. They reinforce one another inside the same commercial ecosystem, each increasing the effectiveness of the others. The casino floor generates activity for the hotel. The hotel extends customer visits. Longer visits support restaurants and live entertainment. Those experiences bring guests back again, creating even more activity on the casino floor. The engine feeds itself through repetition, and the longer that cycle continues, the less the business depends on luck and the more it depends on the quiet discipline of mathematics working patiently beneath every decision. If mathematics explains why the business earns money, the building explains why people continue feeding that mathematics. Walk through almost any successful property and you begin noticing patterns that appear ordinary until you ask why they exist. The gaming floor usually sits at the center of everything else. Restaurants connect to it. Hotel elevators often require guests to pass nearby. Entertainment venues naturally release thousands of visitors back toward it after every performance. Retail stores encourage additional foot traffic through the same space. None of these decisions happen by accident. They are examples of commercial architecture designed to increase movement through the economic engine rather than around it. The objective is remarkably simple. Create an environment where every activity naturally flows into the next without making the transition feel deliberate. A guest arrives for a concert, notices a restaurant after the show, walks across the gaming floor on the way there, stops for a few minutes at a table game, then decides to stay overnight because the hotel is only a short elevator ride away. What feels like a spontaneous evening is often the result of countless design decisions intended to reduce friction between one experience and another. The same philosophy extends far beyond the physical layout. Loyalty programs quietly connect every dollar spent throughout the property. Dining purchases, hotel stays, entertainment tickets, and gaming activity all contribute to the same customer profile. Instead of viewing each department as a separate business, the operator sees one continuous relationship measured over years rather than hours. A guest who spends modestly today may become one of the property's most valuable customers over the next decade. That possibility changes every business decision. Service is no longer evaluated only by today's revenue but by its influence on tomorrow's return visit. Data becomes another invisible asset. Every reservation, every repeat visit, every preferred restaurant, every seasonal travel pattern helps the business understand not simply what customers bought, but why they returned. Marketing becomes more precise. Staffing becomes more efficient. Promotional offers become increasingly personalized. None of this changes the mathematical advantage inside the games themselves. Instead, it increases the probability that customers willingly re-enter the same ecosystem again and again. The remarkable irony is that many of the highest value decisions inside the property have nothing to do with gambling. Improving hotel occupancy during slower weekdays. Attracting large business conventions, hosting major entertainment events, expanding premium dining options, or creating memorable customer experiences can ultimately produce more sustainable long-term revenue than making small adjustments to gaming odds that most guests would never even notice. The business gradually transforms from a collection of casino games into a platform where hospitality, entertainment, real estate, technology, and behavioral economics reinforce one another with extraordinary efficiency. By now, another paradox begins to emerge. The more sophisticated the operation becomes, the less dependent it is on any single attraction. The slot machines matter. The restaurants matter. The hotel matters. The live performances matter. Yet none of them represent the true product by themselves. Together they create something much more valuable than any individual service could ever produce alone. They create an environment where visitors willingly invest their time, and once time enters the system, every other revenue stream gains the opportunity to grow alongside it. That is why the most successful operators do not think like owners of gaming floors. They think like architects of an entire economic ecosystem where every decision quietly supports every other decision, allowing the invisible engine beneath the surface to continue turning with remarkable consistency year after year. At this point, it becomes tempting to believe that a perfectly designed system can guarantee success forever. After all, the mathematics is consistent, the customer experience has been carefully engineered, and every department supports the others. But this is exactly where the next paradox begins. The greatest threats to the business rarely originate on the gaming floor. They arrive from outside the system entirely. Imagine operating one of the largest resort properties in the country. Every hotel room has been renovated. Restaurants are fully staffed. Entertainment contracts have been signed months in advance. Thousands of employees are scheduled to report for work tomorrow morning. Utility bills continue arriving. Loan payments remain fixed. Insurance premiums do not. Pause. Property taxes still come due. Whether 100,000 guests arrive this month or only a fraction of that number, most of those obligations remain remarkably unchanged. Suddenly the business discovers that its largest expense is not uncertainty inside the games. It is certainty outside them. Fixed costs continue moving with relentless precision regardless of customer demand. That reality explains why experienced operators spend enormous effort preparing for situations they hope never occur. Economic slowdowns reduce discretionary travel. Airline disruptions affect tourism. Large conventions relocate. Consumer confidence weakens. Even changes in regional competition can redirect visitor traffic toward entirely different destinations. None of these events alter the mathematical advantage inside a blackjack table or a slot machine. Yet every one of them influences whether enough guests enter the building for that advantage to matter. This creates a fascinating imbalance. The casino can control probability but cannot control demand. It can optimize operations but cannot determine the broader economy. It can design exceptional customer experiences yet still depend upon millions of independent travel decisions made by people it will never meet. That is why financial discipline becomes every bit as important as operational excellence. During prosperous years, successful operators often strengthen cash reserves, refinance debt, modernize facilities, and diversify revenue sources because they understand that favorable conditions eventually change. The objective is not merely maximizing today's profit. It is ensuring the system remains resilient when tomorrow becomes less predictable. Diversification quietly becomes another hidden layer of the business model. Hotels reduce dependence on gaming revenue. Convention centers attract corporate visitors during weekdays. Entertainment venues generate traffic even among guests who rarely gamble. Premium restaurants appeal to local residents as well as tourists. Retail space creates additional income independent of gaming activity. Every new revenue stream reduces reliance on any single source while increasing the overall stability of the ecosystem. Ironically, the more successful the property becomes, the less it resembles the stereotype most people imagine. Instead of depending exclusively on gambling, it evolves into a diversified hospitality enterprise where gaming remains important but no longer carries the entire business alone. That transformation explains why modern operators constantly evaluate opportunities beyond the casino floor itself. Their competitive advantage is no longer defined solely by statistical odds. It is measured by resilience, adaptability, operational efficiency, and the ability to continue attracting visitors even when external conditions become uncertain. The mathematics may still provide the foundation, but long-term survival ultimately belongs to the businesses capable of protecting the entire system when forces beyond their control begin pushing against it. By now, the business no longer resembles the simple idea most people started with. The cards, the chips, the spinning wheels, and the flashing lights have gradually faded into the background. What remains is something much larger. A system that quietly studies people without them ever feeling studied. That does not mean manipulating every decision or controlling every outcome. It means recognizing predictable patterns that appear whenever millions of independent choices are observed over long periods of time. Every successful operator understands that people rarely visit for exactly the same reason twice. One guest arrives for a business convention. Another celebrates an anniversary. A family books a weekend getaway because of a concert. Friends meet for dinner before exploring the property together. Some visitors never touch a gaming table at all, while others spend most of their evening there. The remarkable challenge is designing a place flexible enough to satisfy every one of those journeys while still guiding them through the same economic ecosystem. This is where customer experience becomes one of the most valuable assets the business can own. Long before a guest remembers how much they won or lost, they remember whether the hotel check-in felt effortless, whether dinner Exceeded expectations, whether the entertainment justified the trip, whether employees solved problems quickly, and whether the property felt worth visiting again. Those memories shape future decisions far more reliably than a single lucky evening ever could. Repeat visits become the true currency of long-term success. A returning guest already understands the property, already trusts the experience, and often spends less time deciding whether another trip is worthwhile. That relationship becomes increasingly valuable over the years because familiarity reduces uncertainty for both the customer and the business. This explains why operators devote enormous resources to understanding satisfaction rather than focusing exclusively on gaming activity. A guest who never places a large wager but returns every year with family and friends may contribute more lifetime value than someone who spends heavily during one unforgettable weekend and never returns. The system rewards consistency more than isolated moments. Even technology quietly reinforces this philosophy. Reservation systems, loyalty accounts, mobile applications, personalized offers, and customer service records all help create continuity from one visit to the next. The objective is not to encourage constant spending. It is to remove friction so that returning feels natural instead of complicated. Every improvement that saves a guest time, increases convenience, or creates a better overall experience strengthens the relationship between visitor and property. Ironically, the longer we examine this business, the further we move away from gambling itself. The games remain important because they provide the mathematical foundation that originally attracted investors. But the surrounding ecosystem has become equally significant. Hospitality builds trust. Entertainment creates reasons to visit. Service encourages loyalty. Technology improves convenience. Data reveals patterns. Mathematics quietly operates beneath all of them without demanding attention. The final picture begins to come into focus. The most successful properties do not rely on extraordinary luck, extraordinary customers, or extraordinary individual moments. They rely on extraordinary consistency across thousands of ordinary interactions repeated every single day. And once you recognize that pattern, another realization becomes impossible to ignore. The real product was never uncertainty. The real product has always been an experience carefully designed to encourage people to return, because every return gives the entire system another opportunity to perform exactly as it was built to perform. The deeper you look into this business, the more surprising the conclusion becomes. Almost everything visible to the public is designed to support something invisible beneath it. Guests see restaurants, hotel towers, theaters, elegant architecture, attentive service, and an endless variety of entertainment. Investors see revenue reports, occupancy rates, operating margins, and return on capital. Regulators see compliance, financial controls, licensing requirements, and consumer protections. Employees see careers, schedules, customer service, and daily operations. Every group observes a different version of the same property because every group interacts with a different layer of the system. Yet all of those layers ultimately depend on one shared objective. Keep the ecosystem healthy enough that people continue choosing to spend their time there. That idea changes how every investment decision is made. Renovating hotel rooms is not simply about appearance. Expanding dining options is not simply about food. Booking world-class performers is not simply about ticket sales. Improving mobile applications is not simply about technology. Each investment attempts to strengthen the overall ecosystem so that every individual department becomes more valuable because the others also improve. Economists sometimes describe this as complementary value, where the whole produces more than the sum of its individual parts. Inside a successful resort, that principle becomes visible everywhere. Better entertainment increases hotel demand. Higher hotel occupancy benefits restaurants. Strong dining experiences encourage longer visits. Longer visits create more opportunities across the gaming floor. Each improvement quietly amplifies every other improvement. This interconnected structure also explains why copying one successful feature rarely creates another successful property. Purchasing newer slot machines does not automatically create customer loyalty. Constructing a luxury hotel does not guarantee high occupancy. Hiring famous chefs does not ensure repeat visitation. Every component must reinforce the others with remarkable consistency. If one major piece fails, the efficiency of the entire system gradually declines. That is why experienced operators spend years refining thousands of seemingly insignificant details rather than searching for one revolutionary innovation. They understand that sustainable advantage usually emerges from countless small improvements working together instead of one dramatic breakthrough. Ironically, this makes the business both extraordinarily sophisticated and surprisingly fragile at the same time. A reputation built over decades can slowly weaken if customer experiences become inconsistent. Aging facilities can reduce demand even while the mathematical advantage inside every game remains unchanged. New competitors may introduce better accommodations or more attractive entertainment, shifting visitor preferences without ever altering the probabilities on a single gaming table. Once again, the mathematics remains constant while everything surrounding it continues evolving. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson hidden inside the entire system. Numbers alone never guarantee lasting success. They only establish the boundaries within which success becomes possible. Everything else depends on execution, adaptation, reputation, operational discipline, and the ability to continue creating an experience that people voluntarily choose over countless alternatives. By this stage, the illusion that this business revolves around games has almost completely disappeared. What stands before you instead is a living commercial ecosystem where finance, hospitality, psychology, architecture, technology, customer relationships, and probability continuously reinforce one another. The games may have opened the door, but the system surrounding them is what ultimately determines whether that door remains open year after year. And that brings us back to the question that started this entire journey. What exactly did you buy? At the beginning, the answer seemed obvious. A casino looked like a collection of gaming tables, slot machines, hotel rooms, restaurants, and entertainment venues gathered under one roof. But after looking beneath every layer, that explanation no longer feels complete. You did not purchase a building. Buildings can be copied. You did not purchase games. The same blackjack table can be found almost anywhere. You did not purchase probability either, because the mathematical advantage exists only when people choose to participate. What you actually acquired is something far more valuable and far more difficult to build. You acquired an ecosystem capable of transforming time into economic activity through thousands of interconnected decisions happening simultaneously. Every guest who walks through the entrance contributes far more than a single transaction. They become part of a constantly moving network of choices. They reserve rooms, attend performances, enjoy restaurants, visit retail stores, return for future vacations, recommend the property to friends, and occasionally sit down at a gaming table where mathematics quietly performs exactly as it was designed to perform. None of those experiences exists independently. Remove enough of them, and the entire system weakens. Strengthen all of them together, and each one becomes more valuable because the others exist beside it. That is why the business rewards operators who think decades ahead instead of weekends ahead. They invest in reputation because reputation attracts visitors. They invest in hospitality because hospitality creates loyalty. They invest in maintenance because consistency builds trust. They invest in technology because convenience encourages repeat visits. They invest in people because memorable experiences cannot be manufactured by architecture alone. The mathematics remains remarkably stable throughout all of it, almost indifferent to individual outcomes, patiently waiting for enough time and enough activity to allow probability to express itself. That is the final paradox. The business appears to revolve around uncertainty, yet its owners spend every day reducing uncertainty wherever they possibly can. They cannot control who wins an individual game. They cannot predict the global economy or future travel patterns with perfect accuracy. They cannot eliminate competition or guarantee every investment succeeds. But they can improve service, strengthen operations, manage capital responsibly, diversify revenue, and continuously refine the environment surrounding every guest. Over many years, those predictable improvements often matter far more than any unpredictable result taking place on the gaming floor. In the end, the most successful operators understand something that is almost invisible to everyone else. They are not in the business of selling luck. They are in the business of building systems where mathematics, hospitality, finance, architecture, technology, customer relationships, and disciplined execution reinforce one another every single day. The games simply provide the foundation upon which that system operates. Everything else determines whether it thrives. So if someone asked whether owning this business means owning a place where people gamble, the most accurate answer would be no. You own a remarkably complex economic machine where every department quietly supports every other department, where every returning guest strengthens the entire ecosystem, and where the greatest competitive advantage is never found in a deck of cards or a spinning wheel. It is found in the invisible system that makes all of those individual pieces work together as one.